I think the reason why some of us are awkward is because there's been hurts there already that we haven't really addressed or let out.
And if you're not married, then something must be wrong with you spiritually.
Single people are overlooked, especially in the church. It just doesn't make sense.
Worthy drink.
I realized that even before I got married, it was always me reaching out to people. Now that I'm married and I realized after I stopped reaching out to people, I realized no one was reaching out back to me. I'm like, oh, so was I forcing friendships to happen? That might just be a me thing, but I thought that who are my friends? Like I wasn't doing it to, I don't know, check off a box or anything. These are people I genuinely want to connect with, and having them not reach out back to me on their own accord, it kind of made me feel like, okay, maybe I don't know how to have friends. I don't know. Or like, I don't know how to, it felt draining, and it just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, I don't want to try as much anymore.
And I think I'm the type of person that I connect better with people in person. We're able to do something together. So it's not like it's just us speaking and I have to like think of really interesting things to say. We can just kind of enjoy being in each other's presence. Like I prefer to plan stuff to kind of go out and do, but to, like Zoom stuff, I mean, I'm enjoying this right now, but I have like Zoom fellowship on Sundays and Zoom services and Zoom meetings at work. So all of this like constant online stuff, I'm just trying to avoid it as much as possible. So I think that might be a part of what people are experiencing in their friendships. Just because someone isn't taking the first step to like initiate a Zoom call or to text, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not invested. It might just be that like COVID has changed the way that we have to check in on our friends and keep up with each other. And I don't know what the alternative is. Really, the only option that we have is technology. But I think it can get to a place where it's just very tedious. So I've had people be like, I'm just not into Zoom this week. Like, can we reschedule? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for saying that before I have to say it. Yeah, but I think COVID has added an extra difficulty to connecting with people that we were even close with before.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I have met up with people who haven't reached out online, like socially distanced, I was like, oh yeah, everything's back to normal. Just some people don't like the screen.
Yeah, so everybody has been like reacting and responding to it differently. That's why I feel like it's more important to have genuine conversations with your friends so that you know how they're responding to COVID and you don't kind of mix signals or miscommunicate with each other and assume things about each other.
Let's talk about like the deep stuff. What has hurt you? Like, I think the reason why some of us are awkward is because there's been hurts there already that we haven't really addressed or let out. So I don't know, Dorothy, do you have any hurts against single people?
Yes, let me get my list of names out. No, I think I mentioned it before where it just feels like I'm not allowed to feel lonely. And I think that's not fair. This was like a hard thing when we got married and then we moved out especially. I'm not allowed to complain about my housing. I'm not allowed to complain about having a dog. I'm not allowed to complain about having a husband. I'm not allowed to complain about having a car because these are all blessings. And so like, you know, anyone would be grateful to have what I have. And like, I am grateful, but everyone's, I think, struggles with discontentment. At some point in everyone's lives, like no matter how much you have, whatever their heart could desire, they'll say, yeah, I still feel like something's missing. So I think that that's a common thing that all of us have, but it's like when I mention these things, especially if I'm talking to a single person, it feels like, yeah, I'm not allowed to complain about these things.
Interesting. Fair. How about you, Andrea?
I think my issue is more like with Christianity in the way that we've talked about like marriage and singleness or singlehood, whatever you call it. I think I've been in a lot of like church services and like Christian groups where it just feels like your spiritual maturity is determined in part by whether or not you're married. And if you're not married, then something must be wrong with you spiritually. Either you're not, focusing on God enough, or there's some type of character flaw, something like deep within you that needs to be resolved so that you can attain that blessing. So I think that's just the frustration that I've had for a long time. It pushed me to a place where I was very like resentful of any time marriage was brought up or that was used in a sermon illustration. I would get like very annoyed and frustrated by it. So I think I'm starting to like slide back to a more kind of healthy perspective. But I think the hurt has always just been with the general tone of the conversation that like marriage is the ultimate blessing that God has for us. Even when we talk about like what it means to be a woman of God, it's always in terms of you can't be a pastor and you're a wife and a mother. And then outside of that, there's no discussion about what it means to be a godly or biblical woman. So it just feels like you're constantly left out of the conversation, and you're constantly kind of looked down on for this part of your life. Like it's not something that I did wrong. That's why I'm single. So I think that's the main like hurt that I've kind of dealt with. And it hasn't been necessarily someone saying this to me directly, but you're just perceptive. You can feel that in the environment. I don't think I've ever been in service where the pastor has used an illustration that was not tied to his wife, or where the woman was not talking about her kids. Like it's always something related to family, never an example that can relate to anybody regardless of their kind of relationship or whatever status.
That's interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah, I hate that having conversations with a lot of single friends, there is that sense of like, yeah, we look down on people who are not married. And like being a married person, that's always like something I'm constantly thinking about. Do I ever do anything? Do I ever post anything or say anything that makes someone feel lesser than because they're not married? Because I know and I hear or I see ways that like single people are overlooked. And it just irks me and it bothers me, especially in the church when like it just doesn't make sense.
There's the other like weird thing where a single person is like constantly talking about there's joy in being single. Like they're just so passionate about the fact that they're single and that there's like blessing in that. And then as soon as they get married, it's like single people don't exist. All they talk about is I'm married, praise God, I'm married. This is my husband, like I'm married. So again, like you speak based on the season that you're in and you know what you're living. So if you're living as a single person, that's how you experience God's blessing. So you talk about that. But there just seems to be this stark like I'm trying my hardest to be content as a single person, but I like my goal is really to get married so that I can never talk about this or think about this season of life again. I don't know if that people do it intentionally, but I think it's something that it's like a prosperity gospel that I developed so deeply that we don't even recognize when we're doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It just, I mentioned this when we weren't recording, but like the idea that you can really tell when someone idolizes their relationship status or when like how big of a deal it is to a person when you see like they either talk about singleness all the time or they talk about being married all the time. I think all of us have our own idols. Like all of us have those things that we hold on to too tightly or that we hold above everything else, but it's just obvious. It's obvious when your friendships change, especially when like someone starts dating someone and then they're completely wiped off the face of this earth. Like you can never reach them again. So it's not uncommon to see that happen. So it's...
How do you guys want to be affirmed? Like, how would you want to be encouraged? I know there's attempts, but sometimes it comes out the wrong way. Like Andrea was saying before, of like, oh, but you'll get there. Like, I don't think that's the right way. Like, oh, you'll get there, giving me that false hope. So, like, how should we affirm our brothers and sisters in Christ who are either single or married?
I think the question, how are you, in like 2021, 2020 should just be eliminated because it's too open of a question. To me, it's not actually getting us anywhere in terms of depth of conversation. So I feel like I've encountered that quite a bit from married people is, well, how are you? Which usually means, are you dating anyone yet? And if not, don't worry, or let's just try and talk about something else. So I think I would find it helpful if you ask me like pointed questions, just beyond how are you? It's how content do you feel these days? Like, are you enjoying your life these days? What are you finding very difficult about life these days? What is giving you joy? Like just asking me specific questions so that we can build a relationship that's not like, I don't want to be a project. So like you want to have the same way people are like, oh, I have Black friends, so I feel like my friend group is diverse. I feel like we could do the same thing. Well, I have a couple single friends, so like my community is very diverse and broad. Just talk to me as Andrea instead of that single person that you want to minister to. I'm your sister in Christ that you want to, build relationship with. So I feel like that's even beyond this conversation of single and married, just ask your friends pointed questions so that you can get to know where they're really at instead of the broad, how are you doing?
Yeah, the whole I am a whole person and not just this slice of me. I honestly hate when people say you'll get there one day, or like, you know, even now as a married person, like, oh, when you have kids. I'm like, what do you mean when? If like I hate when people say, or like when you get a boyfriend, when you, and it's very I don't know if other cultures are like this, like outside of Christianity, but also just like Filipino culture. If a tita hasn't seen you in a long time, one of the first things they say is like, you either gained weight or you lost weight, and then it's, do you have a boyfriend now, or do you have a girlfriend now? Why is it a like, do I need a trophy? Like, why is it a threshold? It's almost like, you know, when there's like a point in a game, when like you set a flag in it. Yeah, why is it that? Why do people treat it like it's like that? I hate that. And so I feel like for me to be affirmed, like, yes, I'm married, but I'm not just married. Like, there's so much more I want to talk about that, like, I struggle with beyond the fact that I'm married. It's just an aspect of my life. Like, if you want to know specifically how has married life been, ask how has married life been. But don't let that be the only question.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be a journalist. Like, we don't need like CP24 level questions or anything. But even just like, tell me, what does your life look like these days? Like, what do you do in your day? And that can lead to so many other conversations. Or what are you interested in these days? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So that's the type of conversation that I find more interesting too. Like, just what are you thinking about these days? What is taking up your mental space?
Those are good questions. Writing them down.